Last week, I looked at what I thought was the first Jaleco Sports collection, featuring a pair of 8 and 16-bit soccer games from back in the 80s and 90s. As it turns out, the same people who just put out that gold compilation also put out a similar set for Bases Loaded back in April. With yet again no Nintendo classics to talk about this week, I wanted to take a trip back in time and cover those baseball games that I missed a few months ago, including Bases Loaded on the Nintendo Entertainment System, as well as Super Bases Loaded on the Super Nintendo. Yep, those are definitely Jaleco Sports games. But are either of them actually worth playing? To answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Electronic Game Player, Video Games and Computer Entertainment, Super Play, and more classic magazines that reviewed these games back when they first came out. Get ready to round those bases and aim for the rafters, but not necessarily in that order, because it's time for another episode of Jaleco Sports Review Crew. Bases Loaded came out at the perfect time. Released in 1988, it not only came out long enough after Nintendo's own baseball game that it actually looked like a major update, but it also preceded a wave of high-profile competitors like RBI Baseball from Tengen and Major League Baseball from LJN. Taking heavy inspiration from Hardball, Bases Loaded did a good job of recreating the pitcher's view that we're so used to seeing on the television. While still rudimentary, there's enough depth to the gameplay to keep the two-player matches interesting, and it looked and sounded substantially better than any of the prior baseball games on the Nintendo Entertainment System. But what did the critics say? Now, if you've watched me cover games that were released in the late 1980s, then you already know that it's sometimes hard to find reviews. That's definitely the case when it comes to Bases Loaded, a game that was released in July of 1988, a full year before Electronic Gaming Monthly hit the scene. But hey, while we don't have EGM to look at, we do have the next best thing, Electronic Game Players. In case you aren't familiar, that was the magazine that Steve Harris created right before Electronic Gaming Monthly. It only lasted 4 issues, but it did give us familiar features like the gaming gossip column from Quarterman and even shared some of the same writers. In fact, future EGM critic Ed Semerad concluded that overall, Bases Loaded is about as real as possible. While you can't choose your favorite team and you won't recognize any of the players by name, it does provide some of the most extensive play mechanics ever seen. If you're looking for a great baseball game with lifelike action and plenty of features, then Bases Loaded may be for you. Unfortunately, Electronic Game Players didn't introduce a proper scoring system until issue 4, but I think it's safe to mark this one as a positive review. Speaking of scoreless reviews, that's also the case when it comes to Computer Gaming World, which reviewed Bases Loaded in their 54th issue. Right from the jump, the game doctor himself, Bill Kunkel, complained that sports games have been given short shrift on the Nintendo Entertainment System. He then laid out a litany of problems with Bases Loaded. There's a tendency for fielders to begin running in random patterns once the ball is hit. There's also a pickoff play, but no real reason for one since there's no stealing. Most annoying, however, is the game's pretense at offering strategic options. 12 teams are available, each containing non-existing players, most of whom have no statistics or rating in any skill areas. So there isn't a dime's worth of difference between them. The only thing that really matters is how fast and accurately the pitcher throws. It has attractive animation and good graphics combined with a very intense batter-pitcher simulation. However, the frustrations frequently threaten to overwhelm the virtues. Like I said, we don't get a proper score, but it's clear that this is a negative review. That means that one magazine liked it and the other didn't. Look, we may not have a lot of reviews to pull from, but at least there's some balance. I say, give Bases Loaded a try. Who knows, maybe you'll like it. Or maybe you won't. I don't know.
ついに出た超リアル、超迫力、超面白ベースボールゲームスーパーファミコン初ジャレコスーパープロフェッショナルベースボールジャレコ
What a difference a few years makes. When we looked at bases loaded on the Nintendo Entertainment System, the best I could dig up was 2 unscored reviews. Now, just 3 years later, there are almost too many reviews for the first Super NES entry, Super Bases Loaded. For those keeping track, this is technically the 5th installment in the Bases Loaded franchise, which should mean the Jaleco has had a whole lot of time to refine their system. What's more, the 16-bit hardware should, in theory, help the developers create a more realistic baseball simulator. But did they do that, and will it translate to stronger scores? Well, the answer to that question is a resounding yes, and also no. Maybe? When it comes to Super Bases Loaded, the scores are all over the place. With so many magazines to choose from and such a range of scores to get through, I want to just start in the middle with video games and computer entertainment. Giving the game a 7 out of 10, Mike Davila concluded that as a gamer, I found Super Bases Loaded a lot of fun to play. But as a critic, I felt like so much more could have been done to make it a complete baseball experience. On the other hand, if you're looking for a hard-hitting, clear-cut baseball game, then Super Bases Loaded is for you. Now, when we look at the lower scores, we see GameZax give the sports game their patented Triple X rating, which is the exact same as the 3 out of 5 that we saw from Nintendo Power. Believe it or not, it's actually Superplay who went the lowest, giving Super Bases Loaded a low 55%, making it their 463rd best reviewed Super NES game. Super Bases Loaded's most noteworthy feature, and its downfall, is the way battles take place from the pitcher's point of view. This makes it incredibly difficult to judge the best time to swing at the ball, and although you eventually get used to it, it never really looks quite right. Scruff and slow, with a strange way of doing things. Now, that's one side of the scale, but do you remember when I said that the reviews were all over the place? Yeah, well, I meant it. As we begin to climb our way back up the scale, we see a very young Game Informer give the game a 7.2 out of 10 in only their second issue. Ace liked it a little bit more, giving it the ridiculous score of 790 out of 1,000. Compared to the likes of F-Zero and Final Fight, this doesn't astonish technically, but gameplay-wise, it's fine. The graphics have a slightly rough and ready, half-finished look to them, but they do their job. It's a real shame more wasn't made of the home run celebration screens. The cheesy tunes provide a suitable ballpark atmosphere. If you're looking for even higher scores, then Ray's clocked in with a fantastic 84%, while Enforce went one tick higher, giving the sports game an 85%. And then there's Game Zone, who took a break from bashing all your favorite games in order to give Super Bases Loaded a high score of 92%. All in all, there's enough variety here to keep even the most avid baseball fan happy, especially in 2-player mode when you can challenge your chum to battle it out on the plates. But surely, I hear you cry, there must be a fault somewhere, and I guess there is. Like all sports games, when you play the computer, you're up against a real toughie. But this is a midgy little complaint when you think how boring it would be to beat it on your first outing. Super Professional Baseball is a pretty amazingly good game. A stronger argument for Nintendo releasing the Famicom in the UK I could not think of. It's Brillo. Beg, borrow, and steal a Famicom to play this game. And just think, if it had been available a couple thousand years ago, then there would still be herds of bars roaming the hills, gonads intact. You know, I could try to explain the whole Barce reference at the end, but it's just better out of context. Trust me on this one. Honestly, it's great seeing this variety of opinions. There are some valid complaints being leveled against the game, yet it seems that a lot of the problems go away if you're playing against a friend, with scores ranging from 55% all the way up to a 92%. The overall average is a solid 73%. And I'm excited to see how that score stacks up with the 16-bit sequel, and I can't wait for the next Jaleco collection. Keep them coming! Hey, thanks for watching me break down these classic reviews. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes just like this one every time classic games get added to modern consoles. Though, obviously, in some cases, it takes a few months for me to realize that the game even exists. Anyway, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite old school baseball game? And how does it rank against Bases Loaded? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back next week with the finale of the Ninja Gaiden Review Crew. That's going to be an epic 5-game episode that looks at the 3D games. And yes, that includes the Nintendo DS spin-off. While I wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,